The name ACN Nambiar may not strike a chord with many of our viewers, but it's interesting to note that he was an aide of Netaji and was accused of collaborating with the Nazis during the Second World War. It's even more interesting to note that British intelligence investigated him for his ties with the Soviets. So who is ACN Nambiar? I have with me Vappala Balachandran. He has an intelligence background. He's been in the police, and he's researched and written a book on Mr. ACN Nambiar titled A Life in Shadow. Mr. Balachandran, welcome to this interview. About Mr. Nambiar, you have spent many years researching and writing about him. Just give us a sense of how this thing actually began.
See, Mr. Nambiar was a correspondent of Hindu from 1926 to 1933 in Berlin. First he was in London, then he shifted to Berlin, where he came into contact with the pro-leftist intellectuals at that time and leaders also. Then he came in contact with Subhash Chandra Bose in 1933 when he was expelled from Germany after the Reichstag fire, in which he was arrested along with 4,000 people. And Bose started at that time giving his philosophy of an independent channel for winning the independence for India, freedom struggle. And then what happened was that from Czechoslovakia, Mr. Nambiar ran away from there to Paris. And finally, Mr. Bose, after he escaped from India, from the arrest, sent for him in 1941 and made him the chief of his independent, almost like parallel government of what he has established in Berlin. So that is his general background. And then he was arrested by the Allied troops after the fall of Germany in 1945. And till 1947 he was in prison.
So I would presume that this allegation about him being a Nazi collaborator actually dates from the time of his association with Netaji.
That's right.
And that is a debate which carries on even to this day.
Actually, the British intelligence was after him when he was forging close links with the leftists. And his brother-in-law, Virendranath Chattopadhyay, was a marked man for the British intelligence. And in Berlin, he was staying with him. And so all these things made the British intelligence take interest in him. And then suddenly they found that he was arrested in the Reichstag fire and expelled. And in 1941, he joins Bose, and then under the protection of Nazi government. So it's a jumble of various allegations against him. Nazi sympathizer, first communist sympathizer, then Nazi sympathizer, and like that. It went on. The file makes very interesting reading.
Now, you have this book, A Life in Shadow. You have spent, I think, about a decade researching.
Yeah, more than a decade. In fact, I started researching from 2001 onwards and completed the first draft in 2013. Then it underwent various editing, and only in December it has appeared in the market. So it's about almost 15 years.
So these are based on Nambiar's own writings, his own personal papers?
Yeah. I met him in 1980 when he was retired and staying in Zurich. It was a call of duty because I was asked to meet him by the then Prime Minister, Mrs. Gandhi. And till he died in 1986, I can say that I was very close to him. But he didn't leave any book or anything like that, no memoirs. Only his recorded, what I call oral transcripts was there. But then that was very patchy. The dates were not mentioned because it's quite old. And he had a nervous breakdown after Mrs. Gandhi's assassination. I brought him twice to India in 1982 and 1984. And the second one was about just 5-6 days before Mrs. Gandhi's assassination. So that broke him completely, and he died in January 26. So I had to do a lot of other research, and I accessed the British intelligence records, voluminous records for which I had to pay quite a heavy price, and then interviews and various special branch records in Bombay. So this is a result of all that research for about almost 13 years.
So the inevitable question, why is this important in today's times? Why are the details, why this book?
Yeah, the book is because This is a missing chapter in the Netaji's overseas operation. You know, many of the people, even I did not know that there was a Indian Legion which was 4,000 strong. It was like a disciplined army. The POWs, that is prisoners of war, were converted into Indian soldiers by Subhash Chandra Bose with the help of Nambiar, and raised in Germany and operating all over Europe. We heard only about INA, but this was a forerunner of INA. In fact, it was a sort of experiment which Bose did, raising his own army with his own culture. Where, you know, there are a lot of ideal thing in this. You know, only one language will be spoken, no difference between caste and religion and all that, and various other things were there. He wanted to, after winning the war, he wanted to bring it back as the nucleus of his new army, which you know, he wanted to do it in India. And then after having some disappointment there, he went over to the Far East and then led the INA. So this is a missing link. This portion is a missing link in the entire history of Subhash Chandra Bose.
A life and shadow, the life and times of ACN Nambiar, who is suspected of being not only a Nazi spy and a collaborator, but also a spy for the Soviets. So, Mr. Balachandran, was Mr. Nambiar also working for the Soviets in some capacity?
No, not at all. You know, this the first tranche of intelligence, British declassified intelligence records was obtained. It was obtained by me in 2005 from a library in Leiden, Holland, and that never had any mention that he was working for Soviets. He was only described as a leftist sympathizer, and of course Nazi, you know, agent or whatever you may call, because they were using the same words for Subhash Chandra Bose also. In the second tranche, which was released in October 2014, somebody in our media made a big mistake, because if they know the bureaucratic procedure of keeping the files, you start with a suspected Soviet agent. But actually it is not only Mr. Nambiar. A number of people who were suspected by the British intelligence of Soviet spies were all clubbed together. Then there should have been, I examined each and every file that was released in October 2014. There is no indication at all that he was a Soviet spy. It is just that the heading, you know, the whole thing is grouped together and then files released. And if you analyze it carefully, it is quite badly released, badly written. And another most important thing is that after Nambiar was arrested in 1945, he was interrogated at length for days together by an Indian army major called Baines. There is no indication at all, there is no suspicion at all that he was a Soviet spy.
So based on your research and your writings, any projections you like to make for India?
India is fine. I think, you know, whatever, we may have a cacophonic democracy, but that doesn't mean that we are losing our basic values. All political parties, I don't have that type of fear about, you know, you would have known Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who spent his life criticizing India when he was facing the hangman's, you know, gallows of the hangman. He was saying, I admire the cacophonic democracy in India. I wish we had that type of atmosphere here. So in a way, it may be, or maybe our media and other things, but still we are not lost sight of our basic values. So I have a lot of hope in that.
Mr. Balachandran, thank you for appearing on Straight Talk, and pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.